Hello, and welcome to Book Circle. I'm Earl Wajenberg. This time we're going to continue our reading of Whose Body? The first Lord Peter Wimsey mystery by Dorothy L. Sayers. Lord Peter has finally figured out who committed the crime, but now you really have to settle these things by finding the body. The vile, raw fog tore your throat and ravaged your eyes. You could not see your feet. You stumbled in your walk over poor men's graves. The feel of Parker's old trench coat beneath your fingers was comforting. You had felt it in worse places. You clung on now for fear you should get separated. The dim people moving in front of you were like Brocken's specters. "Take care, gentlemen," said a toneless voice out of the yellow darkness. "There's an open grave just hereabouts." You bore away to the right and floundered in a mass of freshly turned clay. "Hold up, old man," said Parker. "Where's Lady Levy?" "In the mortuary. The Duchess of Denver is with her. Your mother is wonderful, Peter." "Isn't she?" said Lord Peter. A dim blue light carried by somebody ahead wavered and stood still. "Here you are," said a voice. Two Dantesque shapes with pitchforks loomed up. "Have you finished?" asked somebody. "Nearly done, sir." The demons fell to work again with pitchforks. No, spades. Somebody sneezed. Parker located the sneezer and introduced him. "Mr. Levitt represents the Home Secretary, Lord Peter Wimsey. We're sorry to drag you out on such a day, Mr. Levitt." "It's all in a day's work," said Mr. Levitt hoarsely. He was muffled to the eyes. The sound of the spades for many minutes, an iron noise of tools thrown down, demons stooping and straining. A black-bearded spectre at your elbow, introduced, the master of the workhouse. "A very painful matter, Lord Peter. You will forgive me for hoping you and Mr. Parker may be mistaken." "I should like to be able to hope so, too." Something heaving, straining, coming up out of the ground. "Steady, men, this way. Can you see? Be careful of the graves. They lie pretty thick hereabouts. Are you ready?" "Right you are, sir. You go on with the lantern. We can follow you." Lumbering footsteps. Catch hold of Parker's trench coat again. "That you, old man? Oh, I beg your pardon, Mr. Levitt. I thought you were Parker. Hello, Wimsey. Here you are." More graves. A headstone shouldered crookedly aslant. A trip and jerk over the edge of the rough grass. The squeal of gravel under your feet. "This way, gentlemen. Mind the step." The mortuary. Raw red brick and sizzling gas jets. Two women in black and Miss Dr. Grimbold. The coffin laid on the table with a heavy thump. "Have you got that there screwdriver, Bill? Thank ye. Be careful with the chisel now. Not much substance to these air boards, sir." Several long creaks. A sob. The Duchess's voice, kind but peremptory. "Hush, Christine, you mustn't cry." A mutter of voices. The lurching departure of the Dante demons. Good, decent demons in corduroy. Dr. Grimbold's voice, cool and detached as if in the consulting room. "Now, have you got that lamp, Mr. Wingate? Thank you. Yes, here on the table, please. Be careful not to catch your elbow in the flex, Mr. Levitt. It would be better, I think, if you came on this side. Yes, thank you. That's excellent." A sudden brilliant circle of an electric lamp over the table, Dr. Grimbold's beard and spectacles, Mr. Levitt blowing his nose, Parker bending close, the master of the workhouse peering over him, the rest of the room in the enhanced dimness of the gas jets and the fog. A low murmur of voices, all heads bent over the work. Dr. Grimbold again, beyond the circle of the lamplight. "We don't want to distress you unnecessarily, Lady Levy. If you will just tell us what to look for. Yes, certainly. And, yes, stopped with gold. Yes, the lower jaw, the last but one on the right. Yes. No teeth missing? No? Yes, what kind of a mole? Yes, just over the left breast? Oh, I beg your pardon, just under. Yes, appendicitis? Yes, a long one. Yes, in the middle? Yes, I quite understand. Scar on the arm? Yes, I don't know if we shall be able to find that. Yes, any little constitutional weakness that might... Oh, yes, arthritis. Yes, thank you, Lady Levy. That's very clear. Don't come unless I ask you to. Now, Wingate. A pause, a murmur. Pulled out? After death, you think? Well, so do I. Where's Dr. Colgrove? You attended this man in the workhouse? Yes. Do you recollect? No, you're quite certain about that? Yes, we mustn't make a mistake, you know. Yes, but there are reasons why Sir Julian can't be present. I'm asking you, Dr. Colgrove. Well, you're certain. That's all I want to know. Just bring the light closer, Mr. Wingate, if you please. These miserable shells let in the damp so quickly. Ah, what do you make of this? Yes, well, that's rather unmistakable, isn't it? Who did the head? Oh, Freak, of course. I was going to say they did good work at St. Luke's. Beautiful, isn't it, Dr. Colgrove? A wonderful surgeon. I saw him when he was at Guy's. Oh, no, gave it up years ago. Nothing like keeping your hand in. Ah, yes, undoubtedly that's it. Have you a towel handy, sir? Thank you. Over the head, if you please. I think we might have another here. Now, Lady Levy, I'm going to ask you to look at a scar and see if you recognize it. I'm sure you are going to help us by being very firm. Take your time. You won't see anything more than you absolutely must. Lucy, don't leave me. No, dear. A space cleared at the table, the lamplight on the Duchess's white hair. Oh, yes. No, I couldn't be mistaken. There's that funny little kink in it. I've seen it hundreds of times. Oh, Lucy, Reuben! Only a moment more, Lady Levy. The mole. I think so. Oh, yes, that is the very place. Yes, and the scar, was it three-cornered, just above the elbow? Yes, oh, yes. Is this it? Yes. I must ask you definitely, Lady Levy, do you, from these three marks, identify the body as that of your husband? Oh, I mustn't I? Nobody else could have them in just the same places. It is my husband. It is Reuben. Oh! Thank you, Lady Levy. You've been very brave and very helpful. But I don't understand yet. How did he come here? Who did this dreadful thing? Hush, dear, said the Duchess. The man is going to be punished. Oh, but how cruel! Poor Reuben! Who could want to hurt him? Can I see his face? No, dear, said the Duchess. That isn't possible. Come away. You mustn't distress the doctors and people. No, they've all been so kind. Oh, Lucy. We'll go home, dear. You don't want us any more, Dr. Grimbold? No, Duchess, thank you. We are very grateful to you and to Lady Levy for coming. There was a pause while the two women went out. Parker, collected and helpful, escorting them to their waiting car. Then Dr. Grimbold again. I think, Lord Peter, you ought to see the correctness of your deductions. Very painful. You may wish to see. Yes, I was uneasy at the inquest. Yes, Lady Levy, remarkably clear evidence. Yes, most shocking case. Ah, here's Mr. Parker. You and Lord Peter Wimsey entirely justified. Do I really understand? Really? I can hardly believe it. So distinguished a man. As you say, when a great brain turns to crime. Yes, look here, marvelous work, marvelous, somewhat obscured by this time, of course, but the most beautiful sections. Here you see the left hemisphere, and here through the corpus striatum. Here again, the very track of the damage done by the blow. Wonderful. Guessed it. Saw the effect of the blow as he struck it, you know. I should like to see his brain, Mr. Parker. And to think that, heavens, Lord Peter, you don't know what a blow you've struck at the whole profession, the whole civilized world. Oh, my dear sir, can you ask me? My lips are sealed, of course. All our lips are sealed. The way back through the burial ground. Fog again, and the squeal of wet gravel. Are your men ready, Charles? They have gone. I've sent them off when I saw Lady Levy to the car. Who's with them? Sugg. Sugg? Yes, poor devil. They've had him up on the mat at headquarters for bungling the case. All that evidence of Thipps's about the nightclub was corroborated, you know. That girl he gave the gin and bitters to was caught and came and identified him, and they decided their case wasn't good enough and let Thipps and the Horrocks girl go. Then they told Sugg he had overstepped his duty and ought to have been more careful. So he ought, but he can't help being a fool. I was sorry for him. It may do him some good to be in at the death. After all, Peter, you and I had special advantages. Yes, well, it doesn't matter. Whoever goes won't be there in time. Sugg's as good as another. But Sugg, an experience rare in his career, was in time. Parker and Lord Peter were at 110 Piccadilly. Lord Peter was playing Bach and Parker was reading Origen when Sugg was announced. "We've got our man, sir," said he. "Good God," said Peter. "Alive?" "We were just in time, my lord. We rang the bell and marched straight up past his man to the library. He was sitting there doing some writing. When we came in, he made a grab for his hypodermic, but we were too quick for him, my lord. We didn't mean to let him slip through our hands, having got so far. We searched him thoroughly and marched him off." "He's actually in jail, then?" "Oh, yes, safe enough, with 2 warders to see he doesn't make away with himself." "You surprise me, Inspector. Have a drink." "Thank you, my lord. I may say that I'm very grateful to you. This was a case of turning out a pretty bad egg for me. If I was rude to your lordship—" "Oh, it's all right, Inspector," said Lord Peter hastily. "I don't see how you could possibly have worked it out. I had the good luck to know something about it from other sources." "That's what Freak said." Already the great surgeon was a common criminal in the inspector's eyes, a mere surname. "He was writing a full confession when we got hold of him, addressed to your lordship. The police will have to have it, of course, but seeing it's written for you, I brought it along for you to see first. Here it is." He handed Lord Peter a bulky document. "Thanks," said Peter. "Like to hear it, Charles?" "Rather." Accordingly, Lord Peter read it aloud. "Dear Lord Peter, when I was a young man, I used to play chess with an old friend of my father's. He was a very bad and a very slow player and could never see when a checkmate was inevitable, but insisted on playing every move out. I never had any patience with that kind of attitude, and I will freely admit now that the game is yours. I must either stay at home and be hanged, or escape abroad and live in an idle and insecure obscurity. I prefer to acknowledge defeat. If you have read my book on criminal lunacy, you will remember that I wrote, 'In the majority of cases, the criminal betrays himself by some abnormality attendant upon this pathological condition of the nervous tissues. His mental instability shows itself in various forms: an overweening vanity leading him to brag of his achievement, a disproportionate sense of the importance of the offense resulting from the hallucination of religion and driving him to confession, egomania producing the sense of horror and conviction of sin and driving him to headlong flight without covering his tracks, a reckless confidence resulting in the neglect of the most ordinary precautions, as in the case of Henry Wainwright, who left a boy in charge of the murdered woman's remains while he went to call a cab, or on the other hand, a nervous distrust of apperceptions in the past, causing him to revisit the scene of the crime to assure himself that all traces have been as safely removed as his own judgment knows them to be. I will not hesitate to assert that a perfectly sane man, not intimidated by religious or other delusions, could always render himself perfectly secure from detection, provided, that is, that the crime were sufficiently premeditated and that he were not pressed for time or thrown out in his calculations by purely fortuitous coincidence. You know as well as I do how far I have made this assertion good in practice. The 2 accidents which betrayed me I could not by any possibility have foreseen. The first was the chance recognition of Levy by the girl on the Battersea Park Road, which suggested a connection between the 2 problems. The second was that Thipps should have arranged to go down to Denver on the Tuesday morning, thus enabling your mother to get word of the matter through to you before the body was removed by the police, and to suggest a motive for the murder out of what she knew of my previous personal history. If I had been able to destroy these 2 accidentally forged links of circumstance, I will venture to say that you would never have so much as suspected me, still less obtained sufficient evidence to convict. Of all human emotions, except perhaps those of hunger and fear, the sexual appetite produces the most violent and, under some circumstances, the most persistent reactions. I think, however, I am right in saying that at the time when I wrote my book, my original sensual impulse to kill Sir Reuben Levy had already become profoundly modified by my habits of thought. To the animal lust to slay and the primitive human desire for revenge, there was added the rational intention of substantiating my own theories for the satisfaction of myself and the world. If all had turned out as I had planned, I should have deposited a sealed account of my experiment with the Bank of England, instructing my executors to publish it after my death. Now that accident has spoiled the completeness of my demonstration, I entrust the account to you, whom it cannot fail to interest, with the request that you will make it known among scientific men in justice to my professional reputation. The really essential factors of success in any undertaking are money and opportunity, and as a rule, the man who can make the first can make the second. During my early career, though I was fairly well off, I had not absolute command of circumstance. Accordingly, I devoted myself to my profession and contented myself with keeping up a friendly connection with Reuben Levy and his family. This enabled me to remain in touch with his fortunes and interests so that when the moment for action should arrive, I might know what weapons to use. Meanwhile, I carefully studied criminology in fiction and fact. My work on criminal lunacy was a side product of this activity, and saw how in every murder the real crux of the problem was the disposal of the body. As a doctor, the means of death were always ready to my hand, and I was not likely to make any error on that account. Nor was I likely to betray myself on account of any illusory sense of wrongdoing. The sole difficulty would be that of destroying all connection between my personality and that of the corpse. You will remember that Michael Finsbury, in Stevenson's entertaining romance, observes, "What hangs people is the unfortunate circumstance of guilt." It became clear to me that the mere leaving about of a superfluous corpse could convict nobody, provided that nobody was guilty in connection with that particular corpse. Thus the idea of substituting the one body for the other was early arrived at, though it was not till I obtained the practical direction of St. Luke's Hospital that I found myself perfectly unfettered in the choice and handling of dead bodies. From this period on, I kept a careful watch on all the material brought in for dissection. My opportunity did not present itself until the week before Sir Reuben's disappearance, when the medical officer at the Chelsea workhouse sent word to me that an unknown vagrant had been injured that morning by the fall of a piece of scaffolding, and was exhibiting some very interesting nervous and cerebral reactions. I went round and saw the case, and was immediately struck by the man's strong superficial resemblance to Sir Reuben. He had been heavily struck on the back of the neck, dislocating the 4th and 5th cervical vertebrae and heavily bruising the spinal cord. It seemed highly unlikely that he could ever recover, either mentally or physically, and in any case there appeared to me to be no object in indefinitely prolonging so unprofitable an existence. He had obviously been able to support life until recently, as he was fairly well nourished, but the state of his feet and clothing showed that he was unemployed, and under present conditions he was likely to remain so. I decided that he would suit my purpose very well, and immediately put in train certain transactions in the city which I had already sketched out in my own mind. In the meantime, the reactions mentioned by the workhouse doctor were interesting, and I made careful study of them and arranged for the delivery of the body to the hospital when I should have completed my preparations. And we will conclude the tale of those preparations next time. Thank you.